The afternoon sun beat down on the crowded streets of downtown Los Angeles, casting long shadows between the towering buildings. People rushed past each other, lost in their own worlds, barely noticing the man sitting against the brick wall of an old pharmacy. His name was Walter, though most people didn't bother to ask. He was 72 years old, with weathered skin that told stories of too many nights spent under open skies. His clothes were tattered, held together by hope and stubbornness, and beside him sat a small cardboard box containing everything he owned in this world. Walter had been a carpenter once, a good one. He'd built homes, crafted furniture, and took pride in every nail he hammered. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. A workplace accident had shattered his leg, medical bills had drained his savings, and before he knew it, the house he built with his own hand belonged to the bank. His wife had passed away a year before. His daughter lived somewhere on the East Coast and hadn't returned his letters, and somehow Walter had ended up here, invisible to the world that rushed past him daily. Across the street, seated at a small cafe table, sat a man who looked like he'd stepped out of an action movie. Jason Statham had finished filming for the day and was enjoying a rare moment of solitude with black coffee and the afternoon paper. He wore a simple gray t-shirt and jeans, a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. Most people didn't recognize him when he dressed down like this, and that was exactly how he liked it. The chaos of fame could be exhausting, and these quiet moments of observation were precious to him. Jason had always been a people watcher. Growing up in rough neighborhoods in England, he'd learned early that survival often meant reading people correctly. You had to know who to trust and who to avoid. That instinct had served him well in his diving career, his modeling days, and eventually in Hollywood. Even now, sitting at this cafe, his eyes constantly scanned the street, taking in details that others missed. That's when he noticed them. 3 men, probably in their late 20s or early 30s, walking with a kind of swagger that immediately set off alarm bells in Jason's mind. They wore expensive sneakers, designer jeans, and gold chains that caught the sunlight. But it wasn't their appearance that triggered his concern. It was the way they moved, like predators circling prey, their eyes locked on the homeless man across the street. Jason folded his newspaper slowly, his attention now completely focused on the scene unfolding before him. He'd seen this kind of thing before, back in his younger days in London. Street hustlers, con artists, people who preyed on the vulnerable for sport or profit, or both. The thought made his jaw tighten. The 3 men approached Walter with broad smiles that didn't reach their eyes. The leader of the group, a tall man with slick-back hair and a thin mustache, crouched down beside Walter, speaking word that Jason couldn't quite hear from his distance. Walter looked up with a hopeful expression of someone who'd been ignored for so long that any human interaction felt like a gift. He smiled, revealing several missing teeth, and nodded at whatever the man was saying. Jason leaned forward in his chair, his coffee forgotten. Something about this interaction felt wrong. The body language of the 3 men, the way they kept glancing at each other with barely suppressed grins, the theatrical nature of their gestures, it all screamed deception. He watched as one of the men pulled out what looked like a lottery ticket, waving it in front of Walter's face with exaggerated excitement. The game was beginning, and Jason had seen enough street cons to know exactly where this was heading. These men were about to take advantage of someone who had nothing left to take. And while Jason Statham, the actor, might have been sitting in that cafe chair, it was Jason Statham, the human being, the kid from Shirebrook who'd fought his way up from nothing, who decided he wasn't going to let this happen. Not today. Not on his watch. The tall man with the slick-back hair introduced himself as Marcus, his voice dripping with false sincerity. His 2 companions flanked him like bookends. One was shorter and stocky with a snake tattoo crawling up his neck, the other lean and nervous, constantly looking around as if expecting trouble. Marcus held a lottery ticket between his fingers like it was made of gold, waving it just out of Walter's reach. "Brother, this is your lucky day," Marcus said, his smile wide and predatory. "We just found this lottery ticket, and we checked the numbers on my phone. You know what? It's a winner. $20,000. Man, can you believe it?" Walter's eyes widened, confusion mixing with a spark of something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. 20,000, he repeated, his voice rough from disuse and the cold nights that had damaged his throat. "That's right." The stocky man chimed in, his voice gruff. "But here's the thing, Pops. We got a problem. See, my boy Marcus here, he's got some outstanding warrants." Nothing serious. Just some old traffic tickets that turn into bench warrants. You know how it is. But if he goes to claim this ticket, they'll arrest him right there at the lottery office. We can't have that. Jason watched from across the street as the story unfolded, his hands clenched into fists under the table. He knew this con. It was a variation of the pigeon drop, a scam that had been running in cities around the world for decades. They convinced the mock that they needed help claiming a prize. Then they'd ask for money as good faith or to split the winnings. The victim would hand over whatever cash they had, and the scammers would disappear into the urban landscape. Marcus leaned closer to Walter, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that was still loud enough for Jason's trained ears to pick up. Here's what we're thinking, old-timer. You seem like an honest man, someone we can trust. What if you claim the ticket for us? We'll split it with you, 50-50. That's $10,000 in your pocket. You could get off these streets, get a place to stay, maybe even find your family again. The mention of family made Walter's eyes glisten with unshed tears. Jason could see the old man's hands trembling, his mind clearly racing with possibilities. $10,000. A fresh start. A chance to rebuild what had been broken. I don't understand, Walter said slowly. Why would you give me half? You found the ticket. The lean one laughed, slapping Walter on the shoulder with false camaraderie. Because we need your help, man. And because we believe in karma. You know? Good deeds come back around. Plus, 10,000 each is better than nothing at all, which is what we'll have if Marcus tries to claim it himself. But there's one small thing, Marcus said, his tone shifting slightly. The lottery office, they are funny about this stuff. They want to make sure the ticket's legitimate, that it hasn't been stolen or reported lost. So they ask for what they call a good faith deposit, just to prove the person claiming it has some skin in the game. You understand? It's only $500, and you get it back immediately when they verify the ticket. Walter's face fell. I don't have $500. I don't have anything. Nothing, the stocky man pressed. No cash hidden away? No money in a bank account somewhere? Walter shook his head, embarrassment coloring his weathered cheeks. I get a disability check once a month. It comes in 3 days. But it's only $412, and most of that goes to food and trying to save for a room somewhere. Jason saw the three men exchange glances, their expressions showing brief frustration before Marcus's smile returned, even wider than before. You know what? That's perfect, actually. $400 would probably work. The lottery people might accept that as a good faith amount. And think about it. In 3 days, you'll have your check. You give us $400, we claim the ticket, and boom, you've got $10,000 coming your way. You could afford to miss one disability check for a payoff like that, right? The con was tightening like a noose. Jason could see Walter's resistance crumbling, the desperate hope of escape from his circumstances overwhelming his judgment. The old man was nodding slowly, thinking about warm beds and hot meals and maybe, just maybe, hearing his daughter's voice again. When does your check arrive? Marcus asked, his voice gentle now, sensing victory. Thursday morning, Walter replied. I can cash it at the check cashing place on 5th Street. Perfect, Marcus said, standing up and brushing off his jeans. We'll meet you right here on Thursday morning, 10 o'clock sharp. You bring the $400, we'll go claim the ticket together, and by Thursday afternoon, you will be a rich man. Jason had heard enough. He stood from his cafe table with the fluid grace of someone who'd trained his body to respond instantly to his will. The chair scraped against the concrete, but the sound was swallowed by the ambient noise of the city. He moved across the street with purpose, his strides long and measured, weaving through the traffic with the timing of someone who performed his own stunts in countless action sequences. The three con artists were still congratulating themselves, practically counting the money they'd steal from a man who had nothing, when Jason's shadow fell across them. They looked up, and for a moment, recognition flickered across Marcus's face. But Jason's expression stopped any thought of celebrity photos or autograph requests dead in their tracks. His jaw was set, his eyes hard as granite, and when he spoke, his voice carried the unmistakable edge of controlled anger. Gentlemen, he said, the words somehow sounding like a threat. I couldn't help but overhear your conversation. Sounds like you found yourself quite the opportunity. Marcus recovered first, his con artist brain working overtime to assess this new variable. Yeah, man, crazy lucky, right? We're just trying to help our friend here claim a winning lottery ticket. Is there something we can do for you? Jason smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Actually, there is. I'm curious about this lottery ticket of yours. Mind if I take a look at it? The stocky man stepped forward, his posture aggressive. This is none of your business. Mate, why don't you just keep walking? Funny thing, Jason continued, ignoring the threat in the man's voice. I've done quite a bit of research for roles over the years. Had to study con artists for a film once. Spent weeks talking to reformed scammers, learning all their tricks. And you know what? Your little story sounds awfully familiar. It's called the pigeon drop, isn't it? Or maybe a variation of it. The color drained from Marcus's face. The lean one began backing away slowly, his eyes darting toward possible escape routes. But the stocky one moved closer, his fists clenching. You better watch your mouth, whoever you are. Walter looked between Jason and his new friends, confusion clouding his weathered features. What's happening? They said the ticket is real. They were going to help me. Jason knelt down beside Walter, his voice softening considerably. Sir, what's your name? Walter. Walter, I'm Jason. And I'm sorry to tell you this, but these men are lying to you. That lottery ticket they showed you, it's either fake, or it's a losing ticket, or it was checked with a fake app on their phone. There is no $20,000. What they're doing is trying to get you to give them your disability check. Once you hand over that money on Thursday, you'll never see them or your $400 again. The words hung in the air like an accusation. Walter's face crumpled as a reality sank in, the brief spark of hope extinguishing as quickly as it had ignited. The three con artists, realizing their scheme had been exposed, began to shift their strategy from deception to intimidation. You've got no proof of that, Marcus snarled. And you're interfering with a private conversation. That's harassment. Jason stood up slowly, his full height and obvious physical conditioning making him appear larger than his actual size. Years of martial arts training, diving, and stunt work had honed his body into a weapon, and his posture now communicated that fact without a single threatening gesture. You're right. I don't have proof. But here's what I propose. Let's walk together to the nearest lottery office right now. It's only 3 blocks from here. We'll have them check that ticket, verify if it's really a winner. If I'm wrong, I'll apologize and buy you all lunch. If I'm right, well, then we'll have a different conversation. The 3 men exchanged panicked glances. The jig was up, and they knew it. Marcus tried one last play. We don't have to prove anything to you. Come on, guys, let's get out of here. He turned to Walter. Sorry, Pops, but your new friend here just cost you $10,000. We'll find someone else to help us. They began to walk away, but Jason's voice stopped them cold. I don't think so. See, what you just attempted is called criminal fraud. And that man right there, he pointed to Walter, might not have much, but he has rights. I'm a witness to what you tried to do, and I've got a pretty good memory for faces. I've also got the phone number of a detective friend who works downtown. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to apologize to Walter, and then you're going to disappear and never try this again on anyone else. The tension on the sidewalk thickened like fog rolling in from the ocean. Pedestrians began to notice the confrontation, some stopping to watch from a safe distance, others quickly crossing the street to avoid whatever drama was unfolding. The stocky man with the snake tattoo took another step toward Jason, his hands balled into fists, chest puffed out in a display of false bravado. You really want to do this? Jason asked quietly, his stance shifting almost imperceptibly. Anyone trained in martial art would have recognized the adjustment, weight balance, center of gravity lowered, hands loose and ready. I've been hit by professional stuntmen for 25 years. I've trained in kickboxing, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and Wing Chun. I'm not trying to intimidate you. I'm trying to save you from making a very bad decision. Marcus grabbed his stocky friend's arm, pulling him back. The con artist's survival instinct was overriding his pride. He'd made his living reading people, knowing when to push and when to fold, and everything about this situation screamed danger. The man confronting them wasn't some random good Samaritan they could intimidate or confuse. There was something in his eyes, a calm certainty that suggested he'd been in far worse situations than this and emerged victorious. "This is crazy," Marcus said, trying to laugh it off. "We were just having a conversation. If the old man misunderstood, that's on him. We don't want any trouble." "No," Jason replied, his voice level. "You don't want consequences. There's a difference. Trouble is what you brought here when you decided to prey on someone vulnerable. Consequences are what happens next." Walter struggled to his feet, using the wall for support. His voice, when he spoke, carried a weight of sadness that cut through the confrontation. Was any of it true? Any of it at all? The lean man looked away, unable to meet Walter's eyes. Even con artists sometimes feel shame when confronted with the human cost of their actions. But Marcus, the leader, had hardened himself against such feelings long ago. "It's just business, old man. Nothing personal." "Nothing personal." Jason's voice rose slightly, the first crack in his controlled demeanor. "You were about to steal this man's disability check. Money he needs for food and shelter. Money that probably means a difference between surviving another month on these streets or not. And you think that's just business?" A woman in the growing crowd pulled out her phone, and Jason noticed a gesture. He turned slightly, addressing the onlookers. Everyone should know what these three men were doing. They were attempting to run a scam on this homeless man. They planned to steal his disability money by convincing him they had a winning lottery ticket they'd split with him. This is how they operate. They target the vulnerable, the desperate, the people who have nothing left to lose and everything to hope for. The stocky man's face flushed red with anger and embarrassment. "You're going to regret this," he muttered. Jason took a step forward. "Am I? Let me tell you what I think is going to happen. I think you three are going to walk away from here, and you're never going to run this con again. Because if you do, if I hear about anyone matching your description trying this scam anywhere in this city, I'm going to use every resource at my disposal to find you. And I have considerable resources. Do you understand what I'm telling you?" Marcus's survival instinct was screaming at him now. He recognized a look in Jason's eyes. It was a look of someone who meant every word they said, someone who had a means and determination to follow through on their threats. "Fine. We're leaving. You've made your point." "Not yet," Jason said. "First, you apologize to Walter. Look him in the eye and tell him you're sorry for what you tried to do." "You can't be serious," the lean one protested. "Completely serious. You tried to rob this man of his dignity along with his money. The least you can do is give him that much." Marcus's jaw clenched, but he turned to Walter. The apology, when it came, was grudging and insincere. "Sorry, old man. No hard feelings." "Now empty your pockets," Jason said, and when the three men started to protest, he held up his hand. "Not for me. For Walter. Think of it as compensation for wasting his time and giving him false hope." "That's robbery," the stocky man exclaimed. "No," Jason corrected. "That's restitution. You were planning to take $400 from him. I'm asking you to contribute something for the harm you've already caused. I'm not particular about the amount. Whatever you feel is appropriate." The standoff continued for another long moment before Marcus, sensing he had no good options, pulled out his wallet and extracted several bills. His two companions reluctantly followed suit. They threw the money at Walter's feet, a gesture of contempt, but Jason didn't care about their attitude. He cared about the result. "Now go," Jason said, "and remember what I told you." The three men backed away, their expressions mixing anger, humiliation, and relief. As they disappeared into the crowd, Jason finally allowed himself to breathe normally again. Walter stood trembling, staring at the money scattered at his feet. For a long moment, he didn't move, as if touching the bills might make them disappear like the lottery winnings had never materialized. Jason knelt down and gathered the money, counting it quickly. $340. More than Walter had seen in one place in years. "Hey," Jason said, holding the bills out. "This belongs to you." Walter took the money with shaking hands, tears streaming down his weathered face. "I almost gave them everything," he whispered. "I almost handed over my only income for the month. What would I have done? How would I have eaten? Jason placed a hand on the old man's shoulder. But you didn't. That's what matters. The crowd that had gathered was beginning to disperse, though several people had recognized Jason by now and were pointing and whispering. One young woman approached cautiously. "Excuse me, are you Jason Statham?" Jason nodded, but his attention remained on Walter. The young woman continued. "That was really amazing, what you just did. Can I do anything to help?" Her question sparked something in the remaining onlookers. Another person approached, then another. Within minutes, Walter found himself surrounded by people asking how they could help, offering food, clothing, information about shelters and services. One man, an older gentleman in a business suit, knelt beside Walter and had a quiet conversation with him. When he stood up, he handed Jason his business card. "I run a non-profit that helps veterans get back on their feet," he explained. "Walter here was in Vietnam. Did you know that? Served his country with distinction and came back to a nation that didn't appreciate his sacrifice. We can help him. We have housing, job training, counseling services. If he's willing, we can start the process tomorrow." Walter looked overwhelmed, unable to process this sudden reversal of fortune. Jason smiled at him, genuine warmth replacing the cold intensity he directed at the con artists. "What do you say, Walter? You willing to give it a shot?" "I don't know," Walter stammered. "I've been out here so long. I don't know if I remember how to be normal anymore." "Normal is overrated," Jason replied. "But safe, warm, and fed, those are worth pursuing. And you've got people willing to help now. All you have to do is say yes." Walter wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "Yes," he said quietly, then louder. "Yes, I'll try." The businessman, whose name was Robert, made a phone call right there on the sidewalk. Within 20 minutes, a van from his organization arrived. They would take Walter to get a hot meal, a shower, and a bed for the night. The $340 would be held in trust for him, available once he was in stable housing. It wasn't a lottery win, but it was something infinitely more valuable, a genuine chance at rebuilding his life. Before Walter climbed into the van, he turned to Jason. "Why did you help me? You don't even know me." Jason thought about the question for a moment. "I grew up without much," he said finally. "Worked hard jobs, took risks, got lucky breaks. But I never forgot what it felt like to be uncertain about where the next meal would come from or where I'd sleep. Nobody should be invisible. Nobody should be prey for people like those three. And everyone deserves a chance to rebuild." Walter embraced him, a brief tight hug that spoke volumes. Then he was gone, driven away toward a future that suddenly held possibility instead of just another cold night on the concrete. Jason returned to the cafe, but his coffee had gone cold. He ordered another one and sat back down, picking up his newspaper. Several people approached for autographs and photos, and he obliged with good humor, though part of his mind remained on Walter and whether the man would successfully navigate the difficult path ahead. A journalist who'd been in the crowd approached him. "Mr. Statham, what you did today was incredible. Can I write about it? People should know." Jason considered the question carefully. "You can write about what happened, but keep the focus on Walter and people like him. Don't make me the hero of the story. The real story is that there are vulnerable people all around us being targeted by predators, and most of the time, nobody intervenes. We need more organizations like Robert's nonprofit. We need more people willing to stop and help instead of walking past. If your article can encourage that, then yes, please write it." The journalist nodded, scribbling notes. "What made you so confident confronting those men? Weren't you worried about getting hurt?" Jason allowed himself a small smile. "I've been punched by professionals for a living. Besides, the right thing to do isn't always a safe thing to do. Sometimes you just have to step up, consequences be damned." As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the Los Angeles sky in shades of orange and pink, Jason finally finished his coffee and stood to leave. He had a dinner meeting with his agent, calls to make, and a script to review for his next project. The machinery of his Hollywood career awaited him. But as he walked to his car, he felt a lightness in his chest that had nothing to do with fame or fortune. Today, he'd done something that mattered. He'd stopped predators from victimizing someone vulnerable. He'd given an invisible man a chance to be seen. In a city of millions, where people often pass each other like ships in the night, he'd chosen to anchor himself to a moment and make a difference. Walter's face stayed with him, the transformation from despair to hope playing over and over in his mind. Jason had starred in dozens of action films where he played heroes who saved the day through violence and cunning. But today, he'd learned something profound. Sometimes the most powerful action is simply choosing to care, to intervene, to stand between predators and their prey. As he drove through the Los Angeles traffic toward his next obligation, Jason Statham made a quiet decision. He would reach out to Robert's nonprofit, see how he could help beyond this one intervention. Maybe fund some programs, raise awareness, use his platform for something meaningful. Fame was fleeting, movies were entertainment, but changing actual lives? That was a legacy worth pursuing. Behind him, somewhere in the sprawling city, Walter was having his first hot meal in weeks, sleeping in his first real bed in years, and dreaming of possibilities instead of just survival. And 3 con artists were having a very different conversation about their chosen profession, and whether the risks were worth it anymore. One random afternoon, one moment of attention, one decision to act instead of look away. That's all it had taken to change everything. And as Jason merged onto the freeway, he smiled, thinking about all the other moments waiting out there, all the other chances to matter, all the other ways one person could choose to make the world just a little bit better. The city lights began to flicker on as darkness approached, each one representing a story, a life, a struggle, a hope. And somewhere in that vast tapestry of human experience, a 72-year-old veteran named Walter was finally finding his way home.